Now, when you send people like this out for interviews, do you suggest, if they are in a position where they have a lot more responsibilities than someone might think that they do, is that something that you want to bring up in a job interview or not?
No, not really, because the employer really doesn't care. All the employer cares about is what can you do for me today.
Okay.
So it would be smart for the candidate, in this case the recent graduate, to talk not so much about their own problems or their own issues in their life and why they need a job, but they should talk more about what they can do for the employer. This means they have to have a good understanding, do some research into what the company's needs and problems are, and then try to craft a message that can, again, directly match your assets, your strengths, your experiences to the company's needs, problems, and challenges. If you do that and make that marriage, then you've got a job offer.
And so how do you go about getting that interview? Because before you can even go in there and impress them with all your knowledge of the company, you need them to call you in, and sometimes that's the hardest part.
Absolutely right. And one thing that folks should not be doing is sitting behind the computer all day applying to jobs online. You know, if this was 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, I would have told people that they should be spending about 75% of their time on networking. In today's world, I tell people it's 95% of your time should be spent on networking. It's really the only game in town. In other words, Diane, if you're in transition, job searching, then you know what? Networking is your job. It's not part of your job, it is your job.
Casting a net out there, letting everybody that you can possibly think of know that you're looking for a job, and have them sort of, if they can, refer back to you, some people who might be able to help you.
Well, yes, yes. And more specifically, there's a system for networking, too. It's not just sitting around and chit-chatting with your friends. Networking, in my world at least, or in the job-seeking world, is something that has a real methodology, a proven approach. It's a step-by-step system that's very easy to learn. It's just that they don't teach this in school.
Nobody ever tells
Nobody
you
ever
that.
teaches
Everybody
you.
tells you that you should network.
I know.
No one ever says what that means. Like, does that
Well,
mean I should go to the pizza place and talk to the guy who serves me
but
my pepperoni and
that's-
ask him
that's good,
if
but
he
no.
knows anybody who can help me out? I mean, what does that mean?
Well, again, there is a proven methodology. It's a system that can be easily learned. It's just not complicated. What I wish is that they would teach this in schools. I wish that before the graduates leave college, they would have a course or a semester in career management and job search techniques. But there's virtually no school in the entire country that offers this. It's pretty strange, isn't it?
It's very strange. And I think I remember hitting this when I got out of school, and it was so frustrating to me. And Elizabeth brought it up earlier, which I found very interesting, is that a lot of jobs will tell you, and by a lot of jobs, I mean just about all the jobs out there that you apply for, even out of school, they ask for experience.
Right.
Well, how in the world am I supposed to get experience if every single job that I look to or apply to
requires experience? But
Where
you
am
don't
I
have any
supposed to get
experience. This is what they call the classic catch-22.
Exactly.
Right? So you raise a good point. What students should do when they're in college is get experience no matter how they can. It can be one of these work-study programs. It could be internships, apprenticeships. It could be volunteer work. It could be getting involved in the associations or organizations that are relevant to your interests. See, I believe that young people, even freshmen, juniors, they can get experience if they just try. But unfortunately, they're sort of hypnotized into this belief that if they just graduate college, they'll get a job and everything will be fine.
You get a degree, you get a job. It just sort of is what happens.
Well, maybe that's the way it was
20
years ago, but it's not like that anymore.
And what happens if you're the kid who's busy bartending or being a nanny or doing whatever other things you can to make ends meet to put yourself through school?
Well, that's
so maybe you're not
experience,
able
too.
to take the unpaid internship.
No, but the things that you just mentioned actually have some very strong and transferable skills.
Okay.
So whether you've been a nanny, a cab driver, a retail clerk, there are ways to package those skills that can be extremely valuable to employers. For example, the types of roles you just mentioned require great interpersonal skills, right? Well, that's one of the biggest things that employers are looking for. They put that right up at the top with leadership skills, with a strong work ethic. So you already have a lot of the assets, even if you've done those kinds of jobs you just mentioned.
But how do I make the employer realize that when I'm asking them for an interview, they're going to look at my resume and say, oh, no, she's a bartender. She never worked in the news industry. So how do you break out of that mold?
It has a lot to do with how you position it and how you package it. If you work with a professional resume writer or a professional coach, they can help you to package this in such a way that it really comes across to the employer. Okay? And in addition, I want to say this. I use the word packaging. It's really important that people understand that this is a sales process. It's sales 101.
Sure. It's all about how you market yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
And a lot of folks just don't get that. So I want to encourage people to think of this as packaging yourself in a compelling way to really get the attention of the employer.
And now, how No, you say that you should use about 90% of your time on networking.
Yep, 90%, 95%.
And not so much on the online applications.
Yes.
But how can people use technology to their advantage right now? Is there a way, or should they stop focusing so much on that?
Well, technology should definitely be leveraged, but that doesn't mean sitting in front of the computer applying for jobs all day. So, for example, you know about social media, LinkedIn, Facebook,
Sure.
all the various social media sites, even some of the ones that are not as well known. For example, we encourage our clients to use something called visualcv.com. And this is a way of creating a very dynamic, interactive, very colorful profile for yourself. And it certainly distinguishes you as a savvy marketer and a savvy technology expert, even if technology is not necessarily your field. Today's world, you have to be technology savvy, otherwise you'll be left behind. So there's a lot of tools online. There's also online job fairs. There's wikis. There's chat boards. There's, oh God, there's so many different ways to interact. There's blogging. So a smart candidate will really leverage these technologies and try to build a reputation for themselves and build a presence online. A positive presence, by the way, not a negative presence. We have to really watch our online identity.
Keep off your Facebook.
Yeah. No beer drinking at parties on your profiles. So technology, absolutely important to leverage. And frankly, I think most young people are pretty comfortable with this. People who are have been around for a while, they might not really they might not really feel so comfortable, but folks who are in their 20s and even 30s, they're digital natives. They actually get it, and they can leverage these technologies much better than perhaps someone like myself. I had to learn it, but it seems like the younger folks just get it. It's in their blood. It's in their DNA.
Well, we sort of grew up in this era of
exactly.
When you were in high school, you IM'd with your friends, and then
exactly.
that turned to the cell phones and the text messaging. And
right.
I think this whole era that we're in right now with technology sort of evolved with my generation. But
for sure.
I remember my first boss when I came out of school still had an old Rolodex.
Yeah.
And it was like a bunch of index cards.
And you left.
I'm looking at that
right.
going, Susie, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, no, look. And I had to show her.
Right. This is called a computer.
But it's hard to adjust to technology when you're not used to it. But you can certainly, like you said, you can certainly use it to your advantage. So I hope that people do.
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of ways they can do that.
Especially in the job hunt segment. I think I really hope that people grow more comfortable with it because, like you said, there are a lot of opportunities out there that they may be missing right now, because they're so committed to their old Rolodex.
Oh, I know. But the networking, which you mentioned, again, I just have to say, I have to emphasize, it's so important. And, some people say, well, I don't know how to network. Well, learn. You can't afford the luxury anymore of saying, I don't network, I don't know how to network. And I love it when people say, I don't know anybody. You don't know anybody? You've been around for 20, 30 years. You've been at camp, synagogue or church. You went to school. You went to college. You have neighbors.
And
you don't know anybody?
By the time you're in your 20s,
exactly.
you have way worse problems than the fact that you don't have a job.
But see, they have a misconception. They think that by saying I don't know anybody, what they're saying is I don't know anybody who can hire me. I don't know anybody who's in a position to make a hiring decision. Well, I understand that, but you can't just jump right to those people. You have to go through several layers.
You don't have to know the CEO of the company.
Right.
You just have to know someone.
You go through the layers, starting with who you know. So when you look at it that way, it's not that complicated. We're not talking about cold calling. We're always talking about warm referrals to people you already know, and then they know people, and they know people. So eventually you land with the decision makers.
Well, thank you so much for being on Ford. Again, the book is Get the Job You Want, Even If No One's Hiring. Ford Myers.
Thanks, Diane.
Love the
Real
name.
pleasure.